What's going on, everyone? It's Sean Mitchell here, and this is a new friend of mine, Senator Fenberg, here in Colorado. I've joined him in his office to talk a little bit about a new bill that was recently passed that I think a lot of my friends who were involved with the Denver Tesla Club, as well as a lot of my clients, past clients and future clients in the real estate industry, will have a lot of interest in. So this new bill was recently passed, right?
It was, yeah. Made it through the Senate and the House.
Talk a little bit about what it is, what's involved with it.
Sure. So the bill is, for those who want to do their own research at home, it's Senate Bill 9 this year in the legislative session. And it really is sort of a bill that attempts to break down the barriers for home battery systems.
Yep.
So people that want to install a storage system in their home for, people do it for different reasons, whether it's they just really want to make sure if the grid goes down or if there's a power outage that they still have some backup power. Some people might want to have it because they just think it's cool to have more control over their energy use in their home. And then other people might do it for financial reasons. Maybe there's someone that lives in an area where there is different rates throughout the day depending on demand and things like that. And so this gives them more of an ability to decide when to use the grid or when to use energy that they may have stored from their solar panels that they've got on their roof. So this really breaks down barriers, creates a path for this type of technology to be adopted at a faster rate because the costs have come down so much. But we needed to make sure the regulatory hurdles were keeping up with the technology advances.
What did this look like before? Because it wasn't illegal to have battery or any sort of backup generator in your house. What did it look like before?
That's right. So it wasn't illegal. There was a time where actually the regulations were very small and there wasn't a whole lot involved in getting approval or interconnection for putting a battery system in your home. But then once the costs started coming down and more products came onto the market, more people started doing it, and that's when the utilities really kind of felt like, whoa, we need to slow this down before we can wrap our heads around the impact and making sure that the regulations are appropriate for what this could do. And so that's when we started seeing requirements and regulations that, I think in some ways come from a decent place, but also probably come from a place of just not knowing exactly what the impact of the technology could have on the grid, and also a little bit from competition. At the end of the day, if you are using energy from a battery that you produce yourself from your roof, you're not buying energy from the utility.
Yeah,
Which probably raises some red flags in the industry.
I could see how that there would be some concern from various constituents. One being the people that generate the power on a mass scale for the city of Denver and as a whole, but also maybe just someone who's unfamiliar with the technology could have some concerns with this new tech. So what are those types of people saying about this paving the way to give more control to the homeowner?
Yeah, when I first started talking about this bill with stakeholders, there was some initial kind of knee-jerk response of saying like, whoa, this is going to bring down the grid, there's going to be rolling blackouts, this is going to be a disaster. And once I went into this saying, I don't want to shove this down anyone's throat. I want this to be a collaborative process where the different stakeholders come together and decide on the best way to move forward. And I think that's why the bill had so much success this year. But, once you sit down and start talking about the technology, the fact that the technology itself, the battery, is actually not new, right?
Yeah.
We've had batteries for a long time. And the fact that someone wants to use batteries in their home isn't a new concept. But the thing that is new is that the costs have come down, the capacity of these batteries have gone up, and the inverters have become much more intelligent, which makes the battery a more useful product than it used to be. And so, once we start talking about the fact that these homeowners already, they'll still have an interconnection agreement, so they're not going to just be doing this and being part of the grid in a way that in any way complicates the sharing or use of electricity with the utility. And they are generally people that are already net metering. So there's a lot of data and information about how these customers interact with the grid already. And we also had a lot of conversations about safety,
Yeah.
and made sure that we explained that this technology, these manufacturers, they're approved by the bodies and the entities and the codes that they need to be approved by. They're UL listed. They still have to get installed by people that know what they're doing, that are installing electricity in your home, and they follow all the electrical codes. And so this really isn't. We finally got to a place where everyone agreed, yeah, this isn't really a safety concern.
Yeah.
That's not an issue, as long as it's installed correctly.
Yeah.
It's really not an issue with anybody being able to game the system on their on net metering, because there is ways to make sure that it is being used in a way that's appropriate and fair. And also, a good conversation was had about privacy.
Yeah.
Making sure that we all were on the same page of what is and what is not appropriate for a private utility to require inside someone's private home. And that's where we started having a breakthrough and talked about how everybody could live with a new regulatory structure. And at the end of the day, what the bill really does is it creates a right for consumers to install batteries in their home, which wasn't on the books before. So, and I don't think any state actually has that in their statutes as a right until Colorado. So that's a big step forward. But the actual details, although it does outline some basic guidelines of what the regulatory structure needs to look like, it really does kick the final decisions and get into the nitty gritty to the Public Utilities Commission,
Right?
Because that is the appropriate regulatory body for this type of thing. So it says that there can't be discriminatory rates or fees. It says that you can't require additional meters on these batteries, which as of now the utilities are requiring.
Interesting.
And it costs more money to install. It costs money to get the meter. It costs money to pay the utility to read the meter every month.
Yeah.
And it just started becoming more of a burden than anything that's valuable. And so, we put in some guardrails saying the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, has the authority to decide in a future date if some systems are so big that they need extra technology or extra metering, they're allowed to permit that. But for a run-of-the-mill kind of basic battery storage system, especially one that's tied to solar panels that have someone that's net metering, there shouldn't be a complicated process to get an approval. And it should be streamlined and simple.
So from my perspective, I'm thinking very much about a residential house, but how does this impact commercial big buildings like this?
Sure. I mean, theoretically, it applies to them as well.
Yeah.
Now, I learned more than I probably ever wanted to learn about some of this stuff when we first started talking about this bill. But, larger energy users, so commercial as well as industrial, if they are going to be using batteries, they're probably using it in a different setup than a residential would be. Residential homeowner might want to do the DC coupled behind the meter system, and that's where the regulatory burdens really were found. If someone is doing in front of the meter, it's a different story, because then technically the utility has a right to interact with that in a different way. If it's AC coupled, it's going to be different as well. So this really, although theoretically applies to every type of consumer, it's going to be most beneficial, and it's going to clear the path mostly for the residential market, because that's who was seeing these burdens put up by utilities at times.
For a large-scale energy producer like Xcel, what's their perspective on this? What have they had to say in this bill?
So, I introduced a similar bill last year. It didn't pass. It didn't get out of committee, but we had a really good debate and conversation. And I think since then, up until this bill passed last week, we basically have been having conversations of what could we do differently this time to get their support, or at least get them to be able to live with it. And to their credit, they really were a very collaborative partner on this bill, and got to a place where they supported it. So they didn't oppose the bill. They don't oppose the concept. In fact, I think they, as a company, are really coming around and realize that this technology is not only good for consumers and people want to do it, and that's frankly they need to respond to what their consumers are asking for as well. But it's also, I think they more and more see it as an asset for their company. Down the road, they're going to probably just like every utility, they're going to be a little bit more of a service company
Yeah.
than just simply a company that sells electrons.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that we can develop out this sort of robust customer service model,
Yeah.
where people have, smart
Yeah.
inverters, they have
Yeah.
smart meters, they have smart appliances in their homes, and potentially there are different types of products the utilities sell to those consumers rather than just everyone gets the same product. I think they see that as a place to increase their market. And so I think more and more they're evolving, as well as other utilities around the country, to adopt and be a little bit more excited about this type of technology rather than seen as competition.
That's right. And, from my perspective, my impression is that they seem very forward-thinking, very open to new tech. A lot of my friends who own electric vehicles are thankful that they've got the ability to plug in and power their car up in the middle of the night when the rates are the lowest. And so, a utility company could say, well, sorry, standard rate all across the board, but they're thinking of some ways, I think, to win-wins for everyone.
I think that's right. And I think they are adopting some of these policies and technologies faster than a lot of other utilities, and I give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah.
I still think they need to do more, of course, and they know I'll never stop telling them that.
Right.
But I am pleased with the collaborative effort they've had on this bill and some other things that are happening in the legislature.
That's great. Maybe just one final thought for those that are really interested in things like the battery storage, providing consumers more of a control over the energy they produce. What can we here as Coloradans expect moving forward for some things that are top of mind to you?
It's a good question. I think there's going to be a lot of conversations around energy in the years to come. I mean, the industry and the technology is just evolving so fast. So, I think there will be more policies on electric vehicles.
Yes.
I think on one hand, the vehicles themselves are becoming more affordable and accessible for people, but we need to also build out the infrastructure. Or else people are not going to want to buy that electric car if they don't know where they're going to be able to charge it. And so some of it is, practically speaking, we need more electric charging stations. Another part of it is a little bit more emotional and psychological, where people just need to be convinced that there's enough out there that they won't be stuck on the side of the highway. The range anxiety concept. So I do think we as a state are moving forward with building out that infrastructure more. A lot of the money that came from the Volkswagen settlement is actually going towards that, which is great. I think we still need to do more. There's a pending bill that would allow the utilities to build some of that out. Right now they're barred from doing it, actually. They're prohibited from doing it. So that's one aspect that I think we're going to see, I hope, a lot of movement on, and I would urge your followers and your viewers to contact their legislators to ask for that. Because if we build out the infrastructure, the cars will come. That's really how it happens, and people will buy them. And we are one of the best, if not the best, states to have an electric vehicle. But we still need to solve that problem of making sure we have enough infrastructure to handle it. And then, I think there will be a lot of conversations around on the bigger picture around where our energy comes from as a state. If you're green-minded and you want to get an electric car partially for environmental purposes, but you're charging it from an outlet that's 100% coal or whatever, then you're not making as much of a difference as maybe you think you are. So we also need to address how we're supplying our homes with power. And it's an area where Colorado has been ahead of the curve, but we need to do more. We can do more. We know that. And I think the utilities are more and more becoming a collaborative partner in that conversation, not necessarily through mandates, but through collaboration and saying, at the end of the day, we should do what's most cost effective. And right now, we're seeing bids coming from power providers and folks who want to build more renewable energy. Those bids are coming in much cheaper than traditional fossil fuels. Even if it's a coal plant that's already paid for versus a wind farm that hasn't been built yet, the wind farm is cheaper. And so just simply operating costs of those traditional fossil fuel plants are outpacing the cost of what it means to build new renewables. So that's an exciting time, and I think we'll see the market more and more drive us towards renewables. And I think, we're at 30+% now. I think we'll be inching up towards 50, 60, hopefully 70 in the near future. And, there are probably many other things, some of which will happen at the Public Utilities Commission, others will happen at the legislature.
Yeah.
On energy in general, my interest is more on the sort of technology and electricity side of things.
Yeah.
That's where I have more experience and do most of my work when it comes to renewable energy stuff. But there's obviously a very robust conversation about natural gas as well.
Yeah.
And, it's more and more, it has played a role in our portfolio, but also in our economy and the actual extraction that is happening all over the state. And I think there's a really good conversation that we need to have more of about what are the appropriate protections.
Yeah.
And frankly, who has the final say?
Yeah.
And I think local communities need more of a voice in that process. And we have that conversation every single session, multiple times, and I know we'll continue to have it. So folks can definitely expect that to continue happening.
Great, fantastic.
No matter what.
So I'd like to give you a chance to ask those that are watching this, and likely we'll have thousands of views here. So I know people that are a part of the Denver Tesla Club, a part of the EV community and renewable community, are probably tuning into this. But also, I've got lots of friends here in Denver, my my real estate clients, past clients, and then just friends and family in town. What would you like to ask them or say to them? Could be anything.
Well, I would say, on a sort of from a general sense, the best bills and the best legislation come from people.
Yeah.
They come from actual individuals, not lobbyists, and not always from the legislator themselves.
Yeah.
But they come from people that say, "Hey, here's a problem I've encountered, or here's an idea I've had, or here's a solution to something that I think people haven't thought of before." That's where this battery bill came from.
Yeah.
Came from homeowners and installers that said, "Hey, we've got an issue here, and we think that there's a much more common sense way of addressing it than what is currently happening." And that's when I stepped in and had these stakeholder conversations, and it resulted in being the first state in the country to have an inherent right for people to install storage in their homes.
Yeah.
So what I would say is, don't be shy to engage in the process. You don't have to become a lobbyist. You don't have to even come down to the Capitol. But reach out to legislators and have discussions on issues that you think need to be fixed, whether it's just lobbying or convincing a legislator to support something, or getting your hands dirty and talking about actual policy and getting involved. I mean, the folks who really were the experts that helped me understand this whole area to get the bill to where it is right now really were just concerned citizens.
Sure.
There were people that just know about electricity. They're either engineers or they work in the industry, and they approached me, and that's where this came from. So I would say the best concepts, the best policy ideas come from actual people. So contact your legislators, get in touch with me if your legislator isn't interested in certain subjects. And to me, that's the best way forward. And it's what's great about our legislative system here in Colorado is that it's actually very accessible.
Yes.
Regular people can just show up and be involved, and it's welcomed.
Yeah.
It's not like that in every state.
Yeah.
So I would say take advantage of that and use that to the fullest advantage as you can.
And then one last question, because I think people will probably wonder this. That bill is to be signed by the governor at some point here.
Yep.
When can we expect that? And then what change? How quickly will things start to change?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the bill has passed the Senate and the House. Yeah. So it's out of the legislative process. It will be signed by the governor, I hope. I haven't been given any sort of inclination that he won't sign it, but I think it'll be signed by him in the next couple of weeks.
Great.
And then after that, it will be over in the Public Utilities Commission's hands to draw up the official rules and regulations. And there will be public involvement in that process, so people can be involved in giving feedback on the regulations. And then, shortly after that process is when they'll be on the books. But the actual effective date of those new regulations will just depend on how fast it can move through the Public Utilities Commission.
Sounds good.
But definitely in the near future, it will become the law of the land, and things will start changing.
Great. Sounds good. Well, Senator Fenberg, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank
really
you so
appreciate
much.
it.
Appreciate it.
Sean Mitchell tuning off here. And what are your thoughts on this? Put it in the comments down below. We'd love to hear what you think about this new bill that will be passed. And thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.